Hello and welcome back to Thrive, where wellbeing converges, your source for expert advice and insights on all things mental health and wellbeing. Now, we have a lot of key awareness dates this month. November is packed with some really essential times to really reflect, celebrate, and also acknowledge many of the challenges, issues, and monumentous achievements that people have made. So we've got International Men's Day in November, we've got Transgender Awareness Week, and we've also got Inclusion at Work Week. So our very special guest, who I'll introduce in a second, is going to take us through this journey and really talk to some of the key points, some of the challenges, some of the achievements, some of the accomplishments, and what we really can do as a society to really progress forward. And this is a great chance to introduce Mitch Robson, who's one of our clinical managers here at Converge. How you going, Mitch?
Doing well, Curtis. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. Can you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Mitch. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a registered counsellor and I've been working at Converge for around 3 years now. And I'm one of the clinical managers in the EAP leadership space.
Yeah, brilliant.
Most of my clinical work, my counselling work has been in the space of working with teenagers, youth, working with the LGBTIQA plus population, and recently working more in the space of ADHD.
Oh, wow. Yeah. With the neurodiversity launch. Little shameless plug there. So, yeah, we've obviously got the neurodiversity support.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I guess as well, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit more, what sort of drove you to, or inspire you, to be involved in the mental health industry and specialize in the areas that you have specialized in?
Oh, great question. So for myself personally, the big drive was, my initial thought was I wanted to be someone who was there for especially young people when I didn't have that person when I was growing up. I grew up in a rural area and sort of needing help as a teen. There wasn't anyone there. And so I struggled for a very long time, both with my mental health, but also that was tied heavily with my sexuality. And so that was my initial drive to get into mental health. I wanted to help young people, and I really do care about working with teenagers and young adults. They're a big passion of mine. And then as I started to get my qualifications done, as I completed my bachelor's and then my master's, I was provided an opportunity to work in a role which was titled Gender and Sexuality Counsellor. So it was working at a university with LGBTI students, supporting them in different matters around their gender and sexuality in the university, as well as doing advocacy, training, development, and support there. And so that really launched my career down this path of really focusing heavily in this space of working with young adults in key crux moments of education and change, but then also in areas around awareness around sexuality, gender, bodies and relationships, and working within that space. And so that was 12 years ago now. And so I'm still just chugging along slow and steady.
Yeah, awesome. And making a massive impact as you go, which is absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much for being candid there, Mitch. That, really appreciate that. And something I do love about this podcast is getting vulnerable. A lot of people have heard about my journey, so I hope you're not sick of it yet. So that's to all the listeners. So yeah, we'll very unpack a lot of key essential topics here. So to start with, we're going to look at Transgender Awareness Week and really reflect and see how we can move forward in a more cohesive, more conducive way. So I guess my first question to you, Mitch, is how far have we come in recognizing transgender identities in workplaces, healthcare and society? And are policies keeping up with lived experience?
Oh, big one. Two very good questions. So first up, I just want to preface my answer by saying that I am a cisgender man, so I'm not a transgender person. So my answer to this will be off my observations through family and friends that I know who are trans and seeing what they've gone through. In essence, the last 15 years, we've seen huge steps forward in education, awareness, and in trans issues and trans identities becoming a bit more common in that people are talking about them more. Most people are aware of, if they hear the term transgender, what that actually means. So that's where we've seen some big changes, especially on a societal level, that people are aware that trans people exist and that they are everyday human beings.
Yeah.
As far as the second part to that of going, how are we in recognizing transgender identities? We still have a long way to go. More often than not, when a trans person is their identity is brought up in media, in the news, or something along those lines, it's often with a negative connotation or with tragedy, especially around deaths, or misguided information around being, swept up in gender politics and things like that. And it's often in a weaponized way. So we do see that while there's more talk and discourse around this, we're still seeing these negative, really harmful narratives come through that are impacting transgender people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
As far as policies keeping up, policies are our lowest standard benchmark, I feel.
Yeah, I agree.
Our policies on a federal, state, and workplace level are the minimum required, standard in order to treat people with the dignity, the care, and respect that they deserve. And we have a long way to go in this space.
Mm.
I think especially around healthcare needs and gender affirming healthcare, we can do so much more to advocate and have changes made. And in addition to protecting trans people from being the term that a friend has used, the low-hanging fruit of any sort of negative discourse, of being, constantly attacked. While there's protections there, they're not strong enough, especially the vilification laws, to really stop negative, harmful discourse being used on a regular basis. So we do have a bit more to go, but I don't want to discredit how far we have come and the great progress that we have made, especially when it comes to young people who can now recognize early on that feelings of disconnection with the gender identity they were assigned at birth. They can look that up online and find a name for it. And then they can talk to their parents, and their parents can find someone like myself to talk to about that, to educate themselves. And there are dedicated specialty services and advocacy networks and medical places designed to support individuals with their gender transition. So that's a really positive thing that I've seen evolve and grow over the last 15 years, which has been really wonderful.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And I think, something I'd like to unpack a little bit as well is the negative sort of connotations that you were sort of talking to there. Like, you're seeing the media and things like that, coming out of the US, Australia, UK, all these different, westernized countries where you'd like to hope it's a bit more progressive. And it's a lot of it is, and the news cycle, obviously, it goes through that sort of the negative side of things because obviously it's what draws eyes.
Yep.
We all understand that, but I guess it can be very triggering and difficult for especially transgender people and their close loved ones as well, to sort of cope with, I guess, or and I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, but I guess in a generalized, respectful way, I guess, what like how can if someone is transgender or someone knows someone who is transgender, how can they sort of like try and disconnect from those sorts of things and sort of shield their well-being, I guess?
Oh, great question. So what I see there, Curtis, is often retreating into safer spaces, online worlds that have moderators, that have rules, that have policies and things that govern online spaces are often where you'll find many people who feel that they can't be safe in physical spaces in society. And so online worlds, especially in the gaming environments. Oh, there's so many amazing, really safe, supportive, celebratory spaces for trans people. So when they feel that they can't be themselves in the workplace because there's no, gender transition guidelines, there's no policies that support, different presentations of your gender expression in the workplace, or that there's no signs up acknowledging that you will be safe here and that discrimination against you from, say, customers is not tolerated. They may mask and hide who they are in those physical spaces and then find solace and warmth and comfort and
Connection
acceptance in
as well.
online worlds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, brilliant. I think that's such a good way to put it. And I'd also like to preface as well that, like, realistically, in the day and age that we're in, they shouldn't have to do that. They shouldn't have to have this breadth of negativity and whatnot. People should be able to be who they are. So I think that kind of segues nicely into my next question: is beyond awareness, what real actions can organizations and just us as human beings take to create safer, affirming spaces for trans people?
The first thing is not waiting for somebody to disclose that they are transgender and then make that first step to request support. There's nothing that's a bigger barrier to help seeking than feeling like you have to be the first one.
Yeah.
If businesses and organizations are very honest and caring and committed to making sure that all their employees feel safe, supported, heard, and are a part of the organization, they will create policies in collaboration with staff and external organizations that are experts in this area, so that if someone chooses to come forward and disclose that they are trans, that they're not going to have to be the expert on what they need moving forward, that there is a policy that can be used as a guideline going, great, so if you want to start your gender transition, here's everything we can do to help you. You get to pick and choose what's going to work for you, versus you now need to tell us and guide us and educate us every step of the way. So promoting, well, one, writing the policies, and two, promoting those and being very proud of having those policies and the steps in place is really important for organizations. And a big thing to remember is that you cannot be what you cannot see. If every representation of a staff member in your organization is the cisgender, white, heterosexual person, then everyone who doesn't tick that box will not feel like that they are part of that. Showcasing diversity visually with your media and images in who you interview in the organization, in the conversations that you have, is vital in showing people that they are seen, that they are heard, and that they have a place in an organization. And that goes beyond Pride Month, Ida Hobbit, these days of awareness. It needs to be on a regular basis, not just when they want to tick a box for the diversity and inclusion flag.
Yeah.
So it needs to be
24/7,
meaningful.
365.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It needs to be meaningful, representation throughout.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, from my, bird's eye view and my own personal sort of look on things as well, is like, just as a human being, it's just learn and take the time to be proactive, to actually getting, involved and understand, sort of gender fluidity and things like that, not being scared to understand it. Like I've said, everyone should have the right to be whoever they want to be. And I think as well, don't wait for things to change. Do the proactive learning yourself. Go and find resources online and whatnot. And I'll even chuck some stuff in the show notes as well that we have on hand, tip sheets and whatnot, that will really help push this even further. Definitely. And I guess as well, so we're talking a lot here about what can we do as people to try and break down the barriers. So I guess a good step is to actually understand what barriers still exist. So I guess, question to you, Mitch, is what barriers still exist, like misrepresentation in the media, lack of access to gender affirming care, or workplace discrimination, and how can we dismantle these?
Well, how do we rewrite the whole system? That's
And
how
do we
dismantle them.
recreate the wheel? Yeah.
Yes. But I think barriers, I see it as gaps of communication and gaps in knowledge. So communication, we overcome gaps in communication by building bridges to connect with people so that their voices are seen and heard. So that's the first step in breaking down those barriers. But then gaps in knowledge is through education and awareness raising. So for many organizations, and especially media, it's very easy to get caught up in, the emotions. So someone hears about, an 8-year-old who has came out as trans at school, and they get outraged, they get angry, and the emotions take over, and they lose, I guess, touch with the fact that, well, this is just someone trying to live their life being happy. Isn't that what's really important? Isn't that what we're all trying to do here? And so awareness helps with that. communication, and not about giving voice to the discriminatory, views or the prejudice or anything like that, but communication as in, help me understand why you believe this and what could I do to help you understand maybe that there's a different perspective that might start a conversation around changing your views in the future. And so it's moving forward with firmness, assertiveness, and hosting conversations that are very uncomfortable and difficult. And this is where allies like myself as a cisgender man are really important, because it shouldn't always fall onto the shoulders of trans people to constantly have to defend their rights and to educate everyone else. I can do so much, and I have already, with the people in my life who are also cisgender, be it family members and friends, to help them understand. And so if we feel like we have the tools and the knowledge and the support ourselves to have those really powerful conversations, we can do that. And that's going to help break down a lot of that misrepresentation in particular, because it's all stereotypes and untruths, and it's not really valid or real what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree. Yeah, I think that was a great way to sort of encapsulate it, I guess, where, we can all do what, you know, we shouldn't have to leave it to the person. We can all spread awareness and we can all make a change. No matter, how big you are in an organization or how little you are in society, it's, everyone can make a difference.
Yeah, and this is about the majority supporting a minority group. And if we're a majority, then we know that there's many of us who can work together to have these positive conversations. And then it normalizes supporting and upholding, these values, and really committing to uplifting the lives of everybody, and not tolerating these little things that happen over and over and letting them just slide by. We start to make a more proactive and engaged I guess, commitment or change to our workplace culture and our lives as a result.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Now, I'd like to sort of move towards men's mental health at this point. So obviously we've got November and International Men's Day, and I know those days are quite encapsulated or more holistic around health and physical health and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of space that we can make for mental health, and being a mental health company, it would be remiss of us if we didn't. So basically, I'd like to sort of delve deep into that side of things. So, the statistics are shocking, especially when it comes to suicide rates, anxiety and depression rates and things like that. And there's a lot of shame and stigma as well that's attached to men's mental health. So I guess my first question, Mitch, is why do men experience disproportionately higher rates of suicide, and how is this linked to social expectations around masculinity? So, when I look back at my life when dealing with mental health and things like that as a male, very one of those things is, keep calm, carry on, don't cry, boys don't cry, you're a man up, all that sort of stuff. And it really does shoot you backwards. You feel like you can't take those 2 steps forward, that kind of thing. So, let's unpack that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. You just hit the nail on the head there, Curtis. We raise boys to deny and suppress their feelings. And then they become men who only know how to run away from what they're feeling, and they don't actually know how to not only face it, but then understand and work with what's going on inside. And so then we see, well, when we're really good at running away, we see people turning to our quick fixes, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex addiction, taking risk-taking behaviors, those sorts of things, doing anything to numb and drown out what has been suppressed and bottled up for an existence beforehand.
Yeah.
And our society too also teaches men that when you do well, we celebrate you, we applaud you, we clap you, we want you to feel really great about yourself. But when you do not succeed, we ignore you.
Yeah.
And so what happens is men are terrified of speaking up because, one, they don't know what it is that they're feeling because they've spent their whole life suppressing it. And 2, they're terrified of being rejected and disowned by everyone in their life, be it their partner, their family, their friends, their workplace, because they're not succeeding, and this might be seen as a moment of weakness.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And I think what you just said as well at the start with about sort of boys and raising boys is like, I don't have a question on the sheet, so I'm just going to try and rattle, and then hopefully a question will come out of this.
Yep.
But it makes me think about things like Adolescence, the TV show that was on Netflix, and then like, incel culture, and things like Andrew Tate and whatnot, and really instilling toxic masculinity early, or not having those conversations early to sort of, well, not sort of, to try and stamp out or curb things like toxic masculinity
Yep.
or abhorrent behaviors and missing, put bad views against women and things like that. Because I also want to acknowledge as well that this month is Domestic and Family Violence Awareness Month as well in November. So I think it's really key as well that we sort of talk about that a little bit as well. So I guess the question to you, Mitch, is, so like, when it comes to sort of boys and men, growing into that and not really having that role model or having that
Yep.
conversation, and spending hours on Twitch or whatever, or TikTok watching, streams of, sort of archaic beliefs about women and stuff like that, it causes a lot of damage. So what can we do to sort of identify that early? And then what can we do to then stem that at the root?
So this comes back to education and awareness. I think parents need to educate themselves that this information is online and that it is targeted at young men. And I do say that the social media algorithms, in creating a new profile, say on TikTok, if I said that I was, a 15-year-old man, within minutes of using TikTok for the first time, I will have certain videos shown to me because they know it gets engagement, right? So it's almost like you're already on the back foot as a young person. So having parents as an ally who are educated, who are not going to judge, but really work with and support a young person through this navigation is really important. You mentioned adolescence, and one of the big takeaways from that was the real disconnect between what the parents thought of their young teenage son versus his actual lived experience. They thought they knew him, they thought they knew their son, they thought they knew what was going on, but really at the end of the day, what the show demonstrated was that there was a massive disconnect. And it was because they weren't having conversations. They weren't aware that a relationship is ongoing and needs to be maintained. And they, at some point, unintentionally stopped maintaining their relationship with their son. And then he was seeking solace, empowerment, and some sort of sense of like righteousness through these online channels, this incel culture, to help him feel better about the insecurities that he had inside, because he didn't have the language and the ability to face those emotions himself and work through them. And he felt like the only way forward was that, yes, this way of enacting power and control to run away from my emotions was the only way to cope. By using violence was an effective means of feeling better about oneself, which we know it isn't. It harms everybody involved, especially the victims and the survivors of that behavior.
Definitely. And I think as well, like, when we look at sort of toxic masculinity and whatnot, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. So I disregard the toxic masculinity section actually, because I'll go into a bit of a different question. I'll reframe it. I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there, where you were talking about, families talking to their kids and things like that. And I'd like to sort of explore that a little bit, because I think it has quite a connection to everything we're going to talk about today. So, when I look back at my journey, and I'm not trying to get you pity here, so apologies, listeners, but when I look back at my journey, I had quite a difficult battle with my parents and talking to them about my mental health. So, things that went on with me, they had that whole like keep calm, carry on mentality, being very English, if you haven't worked out
Yeah.
yet. I've never actually said that on the podcast, but yeah, I've got very English parents, English myself, but you know, having that keep calm, carry on, stoic nature, that kind of thing, which obviously is you know, more broadly shared. I guess is like, what can parents do to learn not react in the time, and to sort of change their perception, say if their kid comes out as gay, or you know, bisexual, or trans, or mentally unwell, and that kind of things, because it can have that initial shock. But what can parents and, you know, caregivers and role models do to have a better approach to it, to be more understanding and learn, I guess?
Oh, gosh, how long do we have, Curtis? Because that's
We've got as long
in
as you
essence,
need.
yeah, I break whatever your child brings to you with, especially a young teenage man coming to his parents asking for help. I always break down the core skills that we can use in parenting teens is just three simple things, and it's listen, support, and then problem solve. Sometimes your young teenage person needs to be listened to. They need to feel that their parents are actually hearing them, that they're not being dismissed, and as a result, they feel like that what they were able to share is valid. Yeah, it's real. And then afterwards, the support is that emotional support. For many people, it's that recognition of empathy. Someone going, "Oh my gosh, you know, Curtis, what you've just shared, that sounded like that upbringing you had, that sounded really rough. You know, that must have been tough for you." That is empathy. That's how we support someone. And then as a parent, what better way to support your child by thanking them, by giving them a hug, by telling them that they are loved, right? This is how we support our teenagers. And then if we've listened, we've heard them out, we've supported them, they need further support, then we problem solve. We don't fix. We go, well, what's a way that we could find a solution for this? Is it engaging in a trusted service like Converges to give us some tools and strategies, seeing an EAP consultant for support? Or is it using fact sheets? Is it talking to our GP, engaging in community services, advocacy networks to help us understand and work together as a family unit?
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, you know, this really ties into what we were talking about before about adolescence and whatnot, is having open conversations with your kids, and
Yep.
learning about, you know, what are their interests and what they're, you know, what are they not interested in, but then also monitoring what they're doing online and things like that, because it's a completely different world. You know, I've grew up in every type of media that I'm 20, I think I'm 28 now, and I've gone through it all: VHS, DVD, and now streaming and social media launches, and it becoming like you know, a staple in life. It's a completely different world, and I think we need to make sure that we're monitoring and seeing what's happening in you know, in our teenagers' lives, because you know, things can, you know, mental health can get perpetuated, or views and standards can get perpetuated.
Absolutely. And when it comes to this, what's the best way to help build that connection and ongoing communication with your teens, especially our young men? One is that recognizing that they have already developed great tools and strategies to navigate this world. They can pick up on things that are fake, that are trying to influence them. And so they work really hard constantly whenever they're in these online spaces and social media to navigate around that and not be impacted. So that's the first thing. Always recognize that they are really skilled at this. And two is trust them. If your teenager, especially your young men who's, you know, getting caught up in this incel sort of dialogue, feels like if I go to mum or dad about this and I'm going to get yelled at, I'll have my phone taken off me, I will be punished and I will feel worse, then I'm not going to do that. So if you show trust and curiosity and be like, okay, tell me more, what did you learn by being in this space? Would you be open to hearing my thoughts or a different perspective on it? Then you're not judging, you're not criticizing, you're not punishing, but you're showcasing that, hey, I trust you. And by you coming to me and us having a conversation and working together, we can navigate our way through this.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So I'd like to move again, just sort of more so into sort of the holistic mental health. So get back on track, I guess, because
Yep.
apologies, Mitch. You know, I know I didn't really brief you on those ones, so I do really appreciate it. And I think there's a lot of great takeaways, especially for parents and sort of young people who listen to this, because obviously, we know that we have, 14 to 16-year-olds to 18-year-olds, viewing our content. So I think the key takeaway is just learn and understand different perspectives and views and whatnot, and know what is misinformation and what is misrepresentation. But when we look at men's mental health, what do the numbers reveal about men's well-being? So we're looking at, suicide is the leading cause of death for Australian men aged 15 to 44, and 1 in 8 men experience depression. So there's a lot of key stats there for men's mental health. And, we look at things like stigmatization and whatnot that we've talked about, but what do these numbers, reveal to us?
Being completely upfront is that we have failed men, that we have not shown them that their life is more important than their death. Because if suicide is still the leading cause of death for men, as you said, was it 14 to or 15 to 44?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Then it says to them that it's better if I'm dead than still alive. And so we have to, as a society, look internally and go, what is it that we are doing wrong, that taking one's life, ending one's life first, trying to keep working through a problem seems like the most appropriate option. And I think that comes back to how we set men up to never be allowed to fail. That they have to be perfect and achieve and do wonderful things all the time. And as long as you're doing wonderful things, we will ignore all the bad stuff. But then when you stop doing wonderful achievements, then it all comes crashing down and you can no longer cope and survive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, it was only a matter of months ago, but we are recording, for full transparency, we're recording this in September. So it is Are You OK Day? So, this month. And I think one of those important things, and, we've talked about this in other podcasts when I've interviewed James Slater and a number of other brilliant experts, is the check-in, frequently check in, have those conversations. James had a great strategy called Sideways Conversations.
Yes. Doing something together and talking.
Yes. And I think that's one of the key things, because obviously, we've got a real crisis on our hands here. And, as men, and I don't want to generalize, but, a lot of men do struggle being open and vulnerable. So frequently checking in and trying to get talking as much as you can, and having those short conversations that might even lead into longer conversations, and being able to help where you can. I guess when approaching those conversations, especially with men, how do you think that people should actually try and, navigate or traverse it? Because you say, go and ask how someone is, but then what next? It's a daunting prospect.
Absolutely, because people are afraid to ask how someone is because they're not sure what to do with the answer. Right? And with a man, if we go up to him and we're like, hey, how you doing today? And if he replies, I'm good, then we're like, great, all done. It's not actually a meaningful conversation. And it shows that we are afraid of what the answer is. If the answer isn't, I'm all good, then I don't want to hear it. So it's, how do we ask that question? And Are You OK? Day really educates us on different ways to ask that question. And the first thing that I always say is be curious. If I said to you, Curtis, how you doing today? And your reply was okay, I'm going to be like, well, what does okay look like? How does that feel as far as, how you feel about yourself and the work that you've done? How does that look in, what you've been doing today? And by getting a better understanding, we normalize that it's not just a one-word response, and that men can have a meaningful conversation with other men. And you normalize sharing, the big feels, the big scary thing, the emotions, but also supporting each other, not belittling each other, right? Not laughing and making fun of if a guy's like, oh, today hasn't been that good. It's like, oh, we'll suck it up, running each other down, that banter sort of stuff really degrades our ability to connect with each other as men. And so if we can learn to sit in that discomfort of going, oh, he's just said shed some feels, I can listen, I can support him, and if he needs me to, I'll help him problem solve, then I will. But the big thing is I'm going to hear him out, and I'm going to tell him thanks, still going to tell him that he's still a good mate, still love him, still care about him, and that I'm here for him.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Just showing that care, because you know
Mm,
we say it a lot, and I think this is something that extends to every day. Really, is that a conversation could change a life, and
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
you never know what might be going on in their head, or you know what they might be planning, or what they might be going through. And having that conversation and knowing that someone is there as a support system
It's
would just
huge.
completely divert the direction. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where James's information is so on point.
Mm.
If sitting down and talking, looking at someone in the face is a little too confronting and overwhelming, find something to do together.
Yeah.
Find a chore or a task or something that you both have an interest in. And while you're doing that, engage with each other.
Yeah.
Start off small, build up the relationship, right? Because you might know someone for 15, 20 years, right? But in
Mm.
that time, if you've never had a meaningful, emotion driven conversation that was very vulnerable and authentic and brave, then it's going to be really tough to have that conversation for the first time. So utilize what you can, start small and build up from that point.
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely. And I think as well, like I'd like to pick your brain a little bit with this as well, because I know, and this is speaking from experience, I guess, because obviously I don't want to generalize for everyone, but I think people might resonate with this. Is that like I know when people, like one of my closest friends, he's lovely, don't get me wrong, but I think when he approached, like when he asked me if I'm okay, and then we started talking about things like mental health and whatnot, I instantly went into panic mode, heart started racing, panic attacks started to set in, and things like that. So how like what's your tips for navigating that sort of side of things where it might not be easy for the person at the time, but just making sure that they know that you care and that you're there without
mm.
overstepping, I guess, or going too far where it might sort of jolt or dismantle the progress, I guess.
Yeah. First up, thank you for sharing that
Thank you.
example. Appreciate it. I think reminding yourself you don't have to fix
Mm,
anything in the moment, right? If someone starts to open up and we see, oh, I've lifted the lid and all the emotion has come up and I'm feeling that penny cries, just what I've been saying before, the listen, support, problem solve. Just listen, be there for them. Say, do you want a glass of water? I'm going to sit with you as you get through this. You're not alone.
mm,
That deep empathetic connection and emotional support can sometimes help someone get through that first moment of vulnerability and sharing something really big. And it's a skill. Practicing like empathy and connection on this level is a skill. And for many of us, especially men, we're not shown that, especially from our fathers. So we're not taught it. We
mm,
don't know how to then reciprocate that back to others. So it's a skill that many men have to learn themselves.
yeah,
And so, easy ways to practice that. Going to things like the men's table, men's circles, groups that are dedicated to helping people practice these skills of having these conversations, sitting in emotion and being empathetic towards each other are really great places for it. If that's too overwhelming, engaging in one on one counseling is fantastic for it. Having a space, even if it's on the phone, so it feels more anonymous, to talk, to start unpacking emotions, to sort of see what it's like to get something off your chest in a really safe, supportive way with a professional, like one of our EAP consultants, is a great way to work with that because it's all about practicing the skills, developing your confidence in your ability with them so that you can use them more in the moment. And
mm,
knowing I don't have to fix it, I just have to sit with that person and show them that I care about them. That's going to be enough.
yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, I'd like to emphasize because that little shameless plug, I love it because it is hard sometimes to sort of talk about those sorts of things without sounding like a billboard. But I guess it is to emphasize that like EAP, regardless of who you're with, is there to support you in no matter what you need in terms of mental
Mm,
health and well-being. So you might be doing absolutely fine, but you might have someone in your life who is struggling, but you don't know what to do. to
Mm.
pick up the phone or jump on the website and book an EAP consultation. So, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of people who listen to this are with Converge. So, you know, book an appointment with us and we can give you strategies and we can give you tips and tricks. And you can talk to brilliant consultants like Mitch to, you know, really unpack how you can
Mm.
navigate those conversations. I think that's really, really key. But yeah, shameless plug over.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in my next question is around stigmas. You know, we've talked a
Mm.
little bit about this, well, a lot about this, and I'd like to sort of have a sort of rounded off question with this one is how are outdated stigmas around toughness stopping men from opening up, and what cultural shifts do we need to normalize vulnerability and seeking help?
So I think the big one is, I've mentioned this one before, is men need to always be winning or succeeding. They can never, be just doing okay or actually
Mm,
not achieving. Because this whole toughness is about always winning, always being strong and on top. And so if we can normalize that, hey, it's okay to not to be perfect, to not always be the fittest, strongest, to get the best sales, to have, constant promotions. It's okay to be yourself
mm,
because you, not tied to any outcomes, not tied to any achievements, is still worthy and valid, is really important. And we can normalize that with men by saying, my friendship with you is enough. You don't need to be the best friend in the world. You don't need to be, the most best looking, smartest guy. You don't have to be earning the most money. You just being you is enough for me. And that way we normalize and break down just being ourselves and not tying our sense of worthiness to outcomes or achievements in life. And I think I've worded toughness as achievements because I think that's the big thing here. If we're tough, then we're achieving and that nothing's going to stop us.
yeah.
But if we take down the toughness, the achievements, the outcomes, and we just be human, we be real, we be vulnerable, then we have such much more meaningful engagements with each other. And we
Yeah.
feel more connected with each other too, because
Mm,
disconnection, feeling alone, feeling that no one is there for you, that's what leads men down the path of hopelessness, which brings on depression. And then when that
mm,
hopelessness builds and consumes, that's where we see these rates of suicide kick in as a result. So, yeah,
yeah.
let's break down the whole toughness stereotype. Let's
Mm,
celebrate men for trying, for not succeeding, for being honest and vulnerable, and keep going and facing the challenges and working forward.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think as well, as you pointedly say, just to tack onto that as well, sorry, that when we just talked a lot about toxic masculinity and boys sort of inheriting off social media and things like that, these toxic masculine views and incel culture and stuff like that is breaking down that toughness can be one good
Mhm.
step towards actually preventing those views from sort of permeating or becoming a weed, I guess.
Absolutely, because one of the core parts of those views is that you're not, they call them chads in the incel world.
Mm,
You're not muscular, you're not tanned, you're not good looking enough. Therefore, you will never be liked. And
yeah,
straight away, the first thing is it's breaking down, going, no, you are good enough as who you are.
yeah,
If
definitely.
we see people for who they are, we stop judging them, we stop having them feel like not enough, unworthy of our attention, of our love and our respect, then they feel good enough and they don't need to go down these paths of blaming everyone else for the insecurity and hurt that they're feeling inside and then acting out through violence and control, which is what a lot of these toxic influences encourage as a result. You're feeling this way. Well, that's because you're not good enough and you need to do this to get
Mm,
control of your life. And that's actually the opposite of what we need.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mm.
So now I'd like to sort of segue a little bit into inclusion,
Yep.
and really talk to the topic of LGBTQIA plus inclusion. Um, so as one of your specialties is in that field, I'd like to sort of pick your brain and unpack a little bit, and also look at ways that we can move forward. Again, like we talked in the men's mental health segment of this episode, as well as the
Mm.
transgender awareness, is how we can move forward proactively as a society. So, My first question, Mitch, is what unique mental health challenges do LGBTQIA plus people face, from discrimination and stigma to lack of representation in support services?
Mm, there's two that really come to mind, and these are lived experiences that most people will never face themselves. And the first is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of people who are cisgender and or heterosexual will never have to justify their sexuality or gender to another person. They will never feel that their sexuality or gender is being questioned, or that views or values are being imposed upon them. And so they never have to actually out themselves and the best way to put it, discredit the views of society all around them. So coming out is a massive one. And majority of LGBTIQA plus people are at their most vulnerable when coming out. It's an incredibly anxiety provoking time. For myself, it took me years before I was able to come out to my family, with lots of ups and a lot of really big downs in my mental health in the lead up to that process, because it all starts with coming out to yourself, and then you have to come out to others. And that puts a lot of strain on someone's mental health resilience and well-being. So that's the first one. It's massive. And the second is that once we come out, the one thing that many people may not face is rejection, right?
Mm-hmm.
For many people, disclosing your sexuality or gender, saying, if you're a heterosexual guy, right, saying, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend, there's never a moment of freezing up and expecting rejection from someone. Yet for many people in the LGBTI community, rejection from family, from friends, from teachers, from colleagues, from their community, and when I say community, where they've lived their entire life, is valid, it's real, and it still happens to people on a daily basis. So when it comes to what are the unique challenges, coming out is the first, and rejection for coming out, for showing that you are not like everyone else, are the two big ones that they face.
Yeah.
And then that brings on, all the misinformation, especially the rejection, the discrimination then of treating someone differently because they're not part of the majority, and the views, the prejudice, the microaggressions, the overt acts of aggression as well. We're seeing rise as well, unfortunately, against LGBTI people come through in force as a result.
Yeah, yeah. That makes me think of that, and I mean, it's the most respectful way possible. I don't want to seem like I'm discrediting anything, but it reminds me of, like, for anyone who's not seen it, that Love Simon segment bit in the film where they're all coming out with straight, and all the parents are shocked, and he's like, don't worry, it doesn't change anything about me and whatnot. And I think that it really sort of symbolizes, or puts a spin on a lot of the things that people have to go through, and realistically you shouldn't have to go through those sorts of things. You should be loved for who you are. And like I said, I apologize if there's anything there that was
You just spoiled the whole film for everyone, Curtis.
Yeah. It's been out for a while, so definitely go and
Yes.
watch it. But yeah, I suppose it just sort of like talks to that stigma, I guess, that people have to go through when they do have that stage of coming out, or having to deal with the fear as well.
That's it. And even for people who have parents who are very, supportive and talk about different sexualities and gender and raise their children in a very open, supportive space, I've still spoken to those parents who are on paper ticking every box, but they still have a moment of going, oh, my child, still felt the need to come out to me to disclose that, even though we've raised them to let them know we don't care who you bring home, who you fall in love with. And I think that leads into a greater societal thing, is that this concept of you cannot be who you cannot see. Representation of LGBTIQA plus identities is increasing, which is wonderful to see. But because, let's be real, there's not as many of us. As a result, we sort of feel like that we're not as seen as much, that we're not heard as much, and that we have to actually raise our voice to come out in order to be seen by others.
Yeah. definitely.
which
I'd
then
like
makes
to,
us vulnerable and
yeah,
exposes us to potential discrimination, rejection, and everything else.
yeah, definitely. And I'd like to thank you as well, Mitch, for being so candid and sharing, personal experiences that, it will help people resonate a lot with, with what we're talking about. So really do appreciate it. And I know we've been talking for a while. So how's your energy? You doing okay?
Yep, doing good.
Brilliant. I've got a few more questions for you. So,
Yeah.
how do affirming workplaces, families, and communities reduce risk factors like mental health for the LGBTQIA plus community?
Well, the first thing that I always think about is diversity is a fact and inclusion is an act, right?
Mhm.
So seeing diversity all around us and then the act of inclusion by celebrating that is the most powerful thing that we can do. And this links back to what I said before about it needs to be meaningful. It can't just be tokenistic inclusion work. It can't be, oh, it's Ida Hobbit, so we're going to do something for Ida Hobbit today and then ignore it for the rest of the year. It's actually recognizing, hey, every day of the week is a day to celebrate the progress we've made in overcoming homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. That every day someone's coming out and we want to celebrate and respect them and have them seen for who they are so that they can be themselves. So affirming workplaces celebrate the diversity through inclusion. They don't wait for something to happen and then respond or react to an incident in order to backtrack. And they're actively engaging in proactive messages that are positive, that celebrate, and that raise awareness that uh, if you are part of the LGBTI community, that you are valued, and that if you have views that might feel contradictory to the values of supporting LGBTI people, that you can talk, you can be educated, and you can learn to grow so that you don't feel isolated either.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as we talk about Are You Okay, however many minutes ago, when we talk about that every day is Are You Okay Day, every day is Ida Hobbit, every day is
Yep.
Pride Month, and doing a- doing an action that's meaningful and frequent goes a long way to
Yeah.
promoting inclusivity. And I think
Mm.
that's so well put. And I think to sort of try and recap what you're saying is that like inclusion isn't a luxury or a privilege. It's a necessity, and it should be in the foundations of every workplace culture, every
Yep.
societal belief, and that we all should get on and just let people be who they want to be and be happy.
Mm.
I think that's really
Yep.
key. I've got one more question for you, Mitch.
Mm.
So, are LGBTQIA plus people able to access culturally safe and inclusive mental health care? And if not, what changes are needed to bridge that gap?
Okay. This one is a yes, but answer.
Yes.
Yes, LGBTIQA plus people are able to access culturally safe and inclusive mental health care, which is wonderful to see. The but is that we don't have like a national minimum standard of training of what we accept and what we know is going to provide good quality affirming care for these people. So as a result, we see a lot of really good intentions that the one that I hear the most is, oh, well, I just accept everyone for who they are. And that sounds really lovely. But when a trans person comes into the room and you're just treating them like everyone else, that's actually dismissing a huge part of who they are, which is being a trans person and the ongoing struggles of living authentically on a daily basis. And so how do we bridge that gap? By having good quality training, by having really good quality vetting and conversations with our practitioners in this space is vital for it. And one of the things that I've been really proactive in, and I'm going to plug another service that we have here, Curtis, if you're all right with that,
Go
is
for it.
we do have our LGBTIQA plus helpline, which is a team of specialist consultants who work for us that we've had a conversation with, that we've asked questions of, that we've got them to really stop and reflect on things like, if a trans client came to you, how would you support them? How would you acknowledge these barriers and guide them through that? Or if you had a client come in who was, say, a man who's just come out to his family as HIV positive, how do you support that lived experience? by making sure that they have, if not the knowledge of every experience, but the skill set to navigate that in a very safe, supportive, and nurturing way, then that's what we want to see for it. And so we've had this vetting process, we've had these tough conversations, we've been quite scrupulous in who we've let go on here. But this has allowed us to almost stand behind everyone on this service and go, we do have faith and trust in all of this staff to provide a high quality care and service to customers of Converge who are seeking support.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I know I said it was my last question, but something just sort of piqued in my mind just then. You know, when you're talking about like, you know, a lot of it's like when we were talking about the mental health conversation before, where you know you go in with the best intention, you say like you ask if you're okay, and then you kind of it stops there because you don't know what to do next.
Yep.
And I think you know I'd like to sort of have, like pick your brain a little bit there is when you said you know people may have that like that best intention of being like I forget you know sorry you know I accept everybody for who they are, but then that can be sort of you know wrong to be because then you know like you were saying that you're dismissing a large part of the way someone is. What would be your sort of tips and tricks I guess or strategies for sort of reshaping that and going a step further?
Let's use anxiety as an example here, right? Someone comes in to see me, you know, it's a young trans man. He's 17 years old, 2 years into his transition, and he's like, Mitch, I have so much social anxiety. I'm worried about not fitting in, not looking manly enough with my peers, and I'm really worried about that, and I'm just anxious about it the whole time. If I had this mindset of just wanting to, you know, accept people for who they are, I'm just going to focus solely on the social anxiety. Well, let's talk you through some breathing strategies. Let's talk you through some mindfulness. Let's just focus on calming yourself down and stopping the anxiety when it hits in the moment. But an affirming practice is going, hey, I can see the relationship between your identity as a young trans man, where you're at currently in your transition, and social acceptance, which is really important to you, and how that then manifests as your social anxiety. So I'm going to give you tools and strategies to calm that social anxiety when it comes in the moment, but then also we're going to learn to find out ways to help you work with these other factors so that they're not coming together in this social anxiety in the moment. So it's going a little deeper. It's going a little more what we call holistic and looking at different aspects of the individual's life so that it's seen and heard and understood in all areas for them.
Yeah, brilliant. So I guess in like real world conversations, I guess then how would you sort of pitch having those sort of conversations or going that bit deeper or asking those more asking more questions, sorry.
Yep. And I guess it's having the confidence to ask the questions first up. It's like, hey, so we're talking about social anxiety here, but I've noticed you've got, you know, a pin on your shirt that says he, him, and that there's a trans flag pin next to that. Is it okay if I understand a bit more about that aspect of your identity? And then we go, so do you feel that your social anxiety may be connected with your trans identity at all? And can I support you in understanding that further? And so it's questioning through informed consent, asking, is it okay, building trust and rapport every step of the way to slowly take those steps down the yellow brick road and to understand things a bit more. And so this is where you can't rush it. You need a few sessions for it, right? So sometimes this is 3 or 4 conversations over a few weeks, and then you get an understanding of who you're supporting. They come away with an understanding of themselves, feeling seen, heard, validated, supported, with some tools and strategies as well to help them continue moving forward as a result.
Yeah, brilliant. I suppose, yeah, I guess that's like that whole thing where it's like that takes that good intention and makes it a good action, I guess.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mitch. I really appreciate it. And
you're welcome.
And thank you so much again for being so candid. And I think this is, you know, probably one of my favorite episodes so far. So it's been a blast. And I think a lot of people will have learned so much from listening to this or watching this. So and I know what a lot of the stuff that we talked about on this episode can be highly confronting for a lot of people. So please reach out to whichever support service you feel most comfortable in. So if it's Lifeline, if it's, you know, a GP or a psychologist, or even us here at Converge, we're always here to support you anytime, anywhere. Like Mitch said, you know, we've got the LGBTQIA plus helpline. We've also got experienced, qualified consultants who are here to support you in whichever way that you need, whether that's proactively managing your well-being, or if you're at, you know, just need a chat because something's not right, or you're at crisis point, we're always here for you. But I'd like to extend that to, regardless of who you're with, EAP wise, get in touch. It's free and confidential. Use that service, because you could actually, you know, change your perspective, and you could really alter, you know, the way you're feeling, I guess. But yeah, like I said, thank you so much, Mitch.
Thank you, Curtis.
And it's been a blast, and we can't wait to bring you your next episode of Thrive next month, where we're going to have a bit of a holiday special for December. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Mitch, and we'll see you again next month.